What is good, everyone? Welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the fourth and fifth mirror principle of reality. If you wish to learn more about the first three principles, I recommend watching my previous video. So let's get straight into it today. I'm going to be sharing with you the fourth and fifth mirror principle. So the fourth mirror principle of reality is that the mirror of reality cites the content of the relationship but ignores the orientation. The mirror cites the content of the relationship but ignores the orientation. What does this mean? This means that we shouldn't go along and chase our reflection. If we see that our reality isn't going the way that we want, we shouldn't try and force things to make it our way. And the way that most people do this is through what is known as inner intention. And this is the process of pushing, shoving, trying to force your way to make things happen. Now, when your outer world, which is just the mirror of reality, isn't going your way, is we don't want to obsess over it. If things aren't going the way that we want them to, we don't want to become too focused on that. Is we need to accept what is currently going on, because if we don't, we end up encountering more of what we don't want, because what we resist persists. And if you hate something and you focus more on that, you're just going to experience more and more of it, and you'll end up becoming more irritated. And the more irritated that you become, you're going to end up creating more problems for yourself. Now, when you start creating more problems, is you think that you have to take a more aggressive way of creating your reality. And that makes you push, that makes you shove, that makes you want to force things even more. Now, when you do this, the hackles of reality come up, and it just doesn't work. If you've ever been into Greek mythology, there's a creature known as Medusa, and she was cursed by Zeus. And she has this ability, whenever she stares into the eyes of any living being, that living being will be turned to stone. In the same way, if we're always focusing on our reality and our negative problems that the mirror is showing us, it's like we get turned to stone and we can't move forward. We're stuck in this constant state of struggle. And you end up getting to a point where the reflection isn't going the way that you want, and you're like, I'm sick of this, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. But what are you doing? You're focusing on the mirror. You're still focusing on what you don't want. And there's something called the unity between your mind and your heart. Again, if you want to know more in depth about how this works, I recommend watching my previous video. But this basically means that the belief of what you don't want gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and you still experience more of what you don't want. For example, like if you look at the rich people and the people who are poor, someone who is rich and they are born into a wealthy family, they're just going to see more wealth around them all of the time. And the reflection of reality is showing them that they are an abundant person. So they are going to continue to experience that wealth. Someone who is born into poverty is the mirror of reality is just going to show them that they don't have the money that they want. And they are chasing and they are reflecting from that mirror, and they continue to experience more of that. When we go on this process of taking our focus away from the mirror of reality and going internally within ourselves and shifting our identity, then the mirror of reality will start to reflect this back to us. But the reason we become so attached to the mirror, to the outer world, is because it represents our personal significance. Okay, your value, your ability to attract who you want to attract in your life, your abundance, your lifestyle. If your reality isn't going that well, you're going to become more attached, because you're like, my sense of self-worth and value are dependent upon my outer world showing me what I want. But the more attached you become to the mirror, the less that it's going to work in your favor, and the more problems you're going to have. So this brings me on to the fifth mirror principle. The fifth mirror principle is in order to launch outer intention. Again, if you want to learn more about inner and outer intention, I recommend watching my previous video. Is you need to switch your attention from the reflection to the image. Switch your attention from the reflection to the image. So in other words, you need to focus on what you would prefer to see. Now, in the Reality Shift program, what we go through is this process of view pointing, learning to see your reality in the way that you would prefer. For example, if you don't have abundance, if you don't have that wealth, how would the viewpoint of a wealthy person react to everything in your life? And it takes time and a skill to practice to keep viewing your reality as if you are a wealthy person. But this eventually will be reflected back to you in your reality because you're taking your attention away from the poverty and putting more of your attention on what you would prefer to experience. It's a bit like a donkey. Okay, let's say you've got a donkey and it's got a carrot. You're dangling in front of it and it's attached to its head. Now the donkey really wants the carrot, so it chases the carrot, but the more that it chases the carrot, the more that it can't get it because it's at arm's length. It's a very primitive response. It's like that with the mirror of reality. If we see something and we try and chase it all of the time, we're never actually going to get what we want. So we need to realize when we are expressing dissatisfaction for something that we don't want. And we need to shift our focus through that of viewpointing to what you would prefer to experience. Now, the time it takes for what you want. So when you go through this process of identity shifting, deciding who you would prefer to be, the mirror of reality is going to respond with a delay. In other words, it takes time before the mirror starts to show this back to you. So if you smile in front of a mirror, right, let's say this camera is a mirror and I smile, the mirror smiles back. The exact same thing happens with reality, but it responds with a delay, and the delay can be so slow that it seems imperceptible. So it's like smiling at the mirror, but 3 weeks later, the mirror then smiles back. It's the same kind of principle. But we need to realize that we're going to have this period of once we have shifted our identity, once we have chosen who we wish to be, that there's going to be this time period when the mirror isn't going to show you anything back. And it might even show you things that you don't want even more. In other words, things might even temporarily get worse for you. This is just because reality is shifting to the new relationship that you have to reality. So there's going to be this time period, this time pause where nothing happens for you and things might even get worse. But this is actually a good sign. And that it's really important that you hold to your guns, stick to who you say you're going to be, no matter what. If everything else is falling apart, but you truly stay true to who you wish to be, the mirror of reality has no choice but to reflect this back to you. So when we go through this process of identity shifting, viewing ourselves of what we would prefer to experience, you only want to take a peep at reality to see the positivity or any evidence that supports that what you want is coming into your reality. Let's say, for example, you're shifting to the identification of you maybe being a good coach and earning more money in your reality. Like, you don't want to be constantly checking your emails to see if those links have come through, or constantly checking your bank account to see if the clients have paid you, because you're focusing too much on the reflection, and this is actually going to stop what you want happening because you are chasing the mirror. So you only want to peep at reality, only look when there is any evidence to support of what you would prefer to experience. Take your attention away from the negative and see any evidence to support what you want, even if it's just a tiny bit. But the more you start to focus on the positive and starting to see the manifestation coming into your reality, the reflection is going to get stronger and stronger. And remember, the mirror has no choice. So you always want to be in this state as if you're about to receive what you want, or as if you already have it. Now, when you start to look at the positive aspects of your reality, when you start to see things are actually working. You're starting to get a little bit more money. You're starting to attract the people that you want in your relationship. Your lifestyle is slightly starting to change. And as you start to see these positive shifts in your experience, is you build that momentum, and the reflection gets better and better and better. And soon you're going to be living in a reality where the mirror of your reflection is so good, you no longer need to convince yourself of what you want. So if you look at a wealthy person, they're not like, oh, I need to convince myself that I'm a wealthy person. Their reality is showing them completely that they've got this wealth. So they don't need to keep trying to attract what they want, because everything is already there. We just need to get that momentum built up by shifting our identity, choosing who we wish to be, and then understanding that our reality is going to bring that into us very gradually, but just looking and peeping for the positive. Otherwise, if you continually look at the negative, it's like you're being turned to stone, right? But when you don't see instantaneous results, when you don't see the thing that you want straight away, is your mind comes in and it thinks that the action that you have taken is ineffective or wrong. And then what happens, because your mind thinks, the action that I've taken wasn't right or it's ineffective, the mirror of reality then reflects this back to you. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a kid and you're walking down the street and you're holding your mother's hand. Now you are the kid and your mother represents the universe. And as you're walking down the high street, you say to your mother, Mom, I really want this toy. Can we go and get this toy, please? And your mother's like, yes, darling, of course, we're going to go and get that toy. And as you continue to walk down the street, you start feeling that desire to want that toy even more. You're like, Mom, I really want that toy. Please, can we go and get that toy now? And she's like, yes, darling, of course, we're going to get your toy for you. And then you start going through the different buildings and different streets in order to get to the shop. But then the kid, you're like, are we lost, Mum? I really want the toy now. I don't have the toy. Why don't I have the toy? And the mum, just being the universe, this mirror, reflects this back to you and says, yes, darling, we are lost. We don't have the toy. And you're like, wait, what? I don't have the toy and I'm lost, because your mind has become impatient, and that is reflected back to you in you being lost and not having the toy. The same applies in your reality, right? So you've got to have patience and realize when the mind tries to come in, because your mother, being the universe, she is the alternative flow. She is the one that knows how to get to the shop. But you as the kid don't, but we don't trust. This is why faith is so important. So when you have decided to be a certain person, to have that identity, you want to prepare happily. Okay, you want to be that kid. You want to be smiling and laughing and knowing that your toy is on the way, no matter what. You're preparing to have that toy, and you're not becoming impatient, because again, only the mirror knows how to bring in what you want. It's not your job to figure out the how. Only your mother knows how to get to the shop, and you don't. This also brings me a little bit more onto desire. Now, I've talked in my previous videos that desire isn't bad, but when it creates what is known as excess potential. So in other words, when you're that kid and you're like, I want the toy now, we're lost, why isn't it with me now? That desire makes you force control things. It makes you take your focus off what you want and onto the mirror, and you try to control the mirror. So desire isn't bad, but it only becomes a negative when you try and force things in your reality. So if you find there's too much desire, you need to bring it down just a little bit, so you're not trying to force things in your experience. But what you eventually receive in your reality will be due to how courageous you have been in not giving in to despondency. So sticking to your guns no matter what. If you truly say that you want something and you are representing that in your reality must show this back to you. But you need to loosen the grip on your mind and trust this alternative flow. Trust the mother of the universe to guide you, because again, it uses the law of least resistance, and your mind can't comprehend how it's going to happen. So you need to allow your mind to feel unpredictability and unfamiliarity and get used to this. and know that you're exactly where you're meant to be and that you're going to get what you want. So I hope this information has helped you. Thank you for watching. Peace. Take care.